Welcome to Golden Blue, everybody, home of the college football fan. And don't forget about the checklist. Hat check, sunglasses check, Pepsi check, notes check, sources check, and thick skin is a check. And don't forget to sing gear to represent your team and yourself in my background. Send it to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina, 29657, and get yourself a shout out. On to the next video. In case you're wondering, these are the teams that we don't have represented for the mini helmets. As you can see, we actually have quite a few big brands that's not represented here at Golden Blue. So get your team represented here on Golden Blue. And you already know what time it is, so might as well sit down, brace yourself, and buckle up because you are entering the speculation zone. Well, it looks like George Kliavkoff is running out of time, and he knows it. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about this bad TV deal. It is rumored that ESPN has a deal on the table worth $90 million a year. That's $9 million per team per year at 10 members. So it's already a bad TV deal right there when it comes to money. On top of that, it kind of pigeonholes the Pac-12 into not being able to expand because if they add more teams, they're just going to have to cut that pie even more. And on top of that, the exposure. The exposure is the worst part of this. It is rumored that ESPN only wants 2 games a week, one of them on ESPN Plus and the other game on ESPN. You add in Apple and Amazon, and that gives the Pac-12 only 1 game a week on linear cable. That's not a lot of exposure at all. That will hurt recruiting. And if the Pac-12 can't expand and add San Diego State and Fresno State and have a Southern California presence or footprint, that's going to hurt recruiting as well. First up, let's talk about our favorite college football conspiracy theorist, MacGyver. Here's what he had to say about the situation. Hearing that GK, George Kliavkoff, is telling some of the PAC presidents that he may not have any new developments in the TV negotiations to present at next week's meeting. Another meeting scheduled. One president is telling Big 12 Contact that there is a feeling GK will ask for an extension on the 4/15 deadline. So they have a deadline in place. They want a deal done by April 15th. But they have a sneaky suspicion that George Kliavkoff is going to have to ask for an extension because there's no new developments. This is bad if you're a Pac-12 fan. The Swamp Show is saying this. You've seen from multiple reports that the Big 12 is talking directly or through a third party with the 4 corner schools of the Pac-12. But I didn't report that, as one school had not been in talks. Now, all 4 schools are talking to Yormark one way or another. By the way, I have been mispronouncing a certain show. It is not the Swamp Show, it's the Swaim Show. And I appreciate him telling me on Twitter. Apparently, he's gotten wind of my videos. He wasn't mean about it or anything else, but I have been mispronouncing his show's name. It is not the Swamp Show, it is the Swaim Show. My bad. So apparently, there was a holdout. Was it Arizona State or was it Utah? We know that for sure Colorado and Arizona were talking to the Big 12. And I thought it was for sure that Utah was talking to the Big 12. So if I had to guess, it would be Arizona State. But according to the Swamp Show, now that school is also talking to the Big 12. By the way, this will be a Get It Gang video idea. If you don't know what the Get It Gang is, it's basically a name that I came up with for a group of people that leave video ideas in the comment section of my videos. So if you think that you have a good video idea, leave it in the comment section of this video or any other video, and I just might use it on my next video. This was actually a super chat from last night's live show. This was from John Teal. He said, we, meaning the Pac-12, should have gotten BYU, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Houston. Remember, the Pac-12 was going to expand before, but USC talked them out of it, and then USC left. You talk about backstabbing. That is a backstabbing move right there. Louis Nolan had to say this. Duck fan here. Teams that have the choice need to leave because if they don't and stay and do the deal with the Pac-12, they will go down in recruiting because as a kid, why would you go to a place that you won't get exposure? Very good point right there. This is the worst part of the deal. Not the money, that's not good, but the lack of exposure, that's the worst part of this deal. Finally, the last Get It Gang video comment is from DeBoy00. The first thing that will happen is Gonzaga to the Big 12. They've already been invited in backdoor handshakes according to the Monty Show and Mandel. Yes, I can confirm that by other sources as well. I expect that deal to get reported after the big dance. They said a couple weeks after the big dance, they will be added and accepted into the Big 12. Secondly, if the 4 corners say no, and so does UO and UW, why not just have the Big 12 plug Oregon State and Washington State? These teams would be happy to join the Big 12 with their flag on college game day. If Big 12 is going to end up the SEC basketball conferences, what they really should do is add Arizona State, Utah, Gonzaga, Washington State, Colorado, and forget the rest. Add the college football footprint and gain good brands who can develop over time. And the basketball isn't too bad anyways. I've been hearing 20 teams is what the Big 12 wants. I don't think they can actually pluck any from the Big East though. This is a comment in response from my video yesterday about the Big 12 possibly going after some Big East teams. but I agree with a lot of what he's saying in that comment. I actually do think that the Four Corners will be willing to jump to the Big 12, but if they can't, the Big 12 is certainly not getting Oregon and Washington, so they could go after Oregon State and Washington State. And yes, I had Oregon State and Washington State above Fresno State and San Diego State. You have to go after Power 5 brands before you go after Group of 5 brands. That would give you a new footprint in a new state with Washington and a new footprint in a new state in Oregon. However, I'm hearing that they're in talks with all Four Corners. It is official now. We've been hearing rumor after rumor after rumor. But now it is official. Big 12 is in talks with these Four Corners schools, and it looks like they're really thinking about joining the Big 12. I do think that Arizona and Colorado will for sure join the Big 12, but now it seems like Arizona State and Utah, they're also thinking about it. Remember what I talked about yesterday? Get it gang comment from Mountaineer News 2. It seems from what I've been hearing, Utah is going to have a vote on whether to stay in the Pac-12 or leave for the Big 12. And right now it is split into factions in the board meetings. Some people are saying that moving is too risky, that they need to stay, while others are saying that the Pac-12 caused this mess and should pay for them to leave. The two sides have their arguments, and now we will see what will happen. So, yeah, and I agree with that. Utah has been talking to the Big 12. Now they might be actually taking a vote to see whether they want to go to the Big 12 or stay in the Pac-12 and ride this out. There was one Get It Gang video idea comment that I forgot to mention in the studio, so while I'm here in the car line, I'm going to say it real quick. It's also from Mountaineer News 2. It says, I've also been hearing about he is taking a private jet to a certain university. From what I've been hearing, I don't know which university, but it's somewhere in western part of the U.S. where the Four Corners schools are. I don't know which school he is talking to, but it is a clear sign, not side, of the Big 12 is going shopping. I'm thinking maybe he's trying to convince Arizona State to jump on board, because I think they're the one university that's been adamant that they do not want to join the Big 12. I know Utah can be lumped in there as well, but we've been hearing that Utah is kind of backing off of that and they're willing to talk to the Big 12. So I think that last university that needs to be convinced is Arizona State. Maybe he's taking a plane to Arizona State to try to talk to the president or the athletic director and say, hey, you guys need to jump sooner rather than later. You already know this TV deal is bad. George Kliavkoff is actually going to ask for more time. Are you kidding me? You don't need more time. You need the better deal, and the better deal is the Big 12. Why these teams will stay in the Pac-12 right now at this point, I don't know. I know they want that Stanford and Cal connection, but I honestly think that the Big Ten will grab Stanford and Cal, so that excuse will be out the window. So what these teams need to do is they need to be proactive, not reactive. They need to plan for that case. Hey, there's a real possibility that the Big Ten could come and get Cal and Stanford, so if we're using that for an excuse, that's going to be out the window. We need to make this choice sooner rather than later. And that's just a hearsay argument, but the real argument is the bad TV deal. $9 million per team per year without the Pac-12 expanding, because ESPN is saying, no, we are not adding to this deal. So if you add more teams, you're just going to have to split it more ways. So there will be no presence in Southern California. That's going to hurt the Pac-12. But then the exposure where ESPN wants 2 games, one on ESPN Plus and one on ESPN linear cable, meaning the Pac-12 is only going to get 1 game a week on linear cable. All the other games are going to be on either ESPN Plus, Apple TV, or Amazon Prime Video. That is not good exposure at all. You're going to have subscription after subscription after subscription to catch as many Pac-12 games as possible. Otherwise, you're just going to catch 1 Pac-12 game a week. And chances are, it's not going to be your team if you're a Pac-12 fan, unless you're Oregon and Washington. ESPN is going to want to put Oregon and Washington on that After Dark slot as much as possible to maximize the money they're going to make on that viewership on the Pac-12 After Dark. If you're an Oregon State fan or a Washington State fan, a Cal fan, a Stanford fan, Utah fan, Colorado fan, Arizona fan, or an Arizona State fan, unless you're playing Oregon or Washington in that particular week, your chances of being on linear cable is not good at all. And all these other games are going to be streaming, which is going to hurt your recruiting. Like that comment said, if you're a young kid, why would you want to sign with a team that has mostly streaming, especially if it's not Oregon and Washington, and the chances of you playing on national television is slim to none. This is going to absolutely blast recruiting for the Pac-12. These teams are talking to the Big 12 because they don't want that to happen. George Kliavkoff seems like he's going to want another extension because he doesn't have any new development, so he has nothing new to present to these presidents. This is all bad news. So after the big dance, and after the Big Ten hires a new commissioner, I expect a lot of moves, both from the Big Ten and the Big 12, to pluck some teams out of the Pac-12. And I think these Pac-12 teams will go willingly. They're not going to go scratching and clawing, trying to make excuses as to why they should stay in the Pac-12, which they have been doing that before, but now things are getting out of control and actually desperate. Desperate times call for desperate measures. They see the writing on the wall, and they don't want their football programs to go down into a ditch, especially Utah. Think about Utah. Back-to-back Pac Pac-12 championships. They're recruiting at a pretty decent level for Utah. If they stay in the Pac-12, their recruiting is going to suffer tremendously, and their brand is not going to be good at all because nobody's going to be watching Utah football unless they get that lucky draw for that ESPN game on linear cable. This is all bad news for the Pac-12. So y'all let me know in the comment section. Number one, do you think that George Kliavkoff is going to ask for an extension on that deadline? And if he does, do you think the Pac-12 presidents will give it to him? Number two, with it actually being confirmed that all four corner schools are talking to the Big 12, do you think the chances of the four corner schools actually jumping to the Big 12 has actually risen significantly like I do? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.